discovered a crater 1.5 kilometers beneath the Antarctica ice crust, 482 kilometers in diameter.
2 miles beneath Antarctica, under a ceiling of ancient ice so thick it crushes everything beneath it with unimaginable force, scientists reached something the world was never supposed to see. And what waited below was not silence. It was not emptiness. It was not the frozen dead end everyone expected. Beneath one of the harshest, coldest, most merciless places on Earth, they found a hidden world. A buried realm sealed away in darkness, untouched by sunlight, isolated for spans of time so vast they make human history look microscopic. And the moment that drill finally broke through, Antarctica stopped being just a frozen continent. It became something far stranger, far deeper, and far more unsettling than anyone was prepared for. Before we start, hit the like and subscribe buttons for more exclusive news. Because from the surface, Antarctica looks like the end of everything. Endless white, endless cold, endless stillness. It feels like the one place on Earth where mystery should have already frozen solid. A continent buried under ice, locked down by brutal temperatures and relentless wind. A place so hostile it seems almost designed to erase life, erase movement, erase change itself. And yet all along, beneath that blinding silence, there were signs. Strange signals, radar hints, satellite anomalies, disturbances in the deep. The ice was hiding something, not just rock, not just frozen ground, something active, something dynamic, something alive in the broadest, most unsettling sense of the word. That is what makes this so powerful. Scientists were not simply drilling into ice, they were drilling through a lid, through a barrier, through layer after layer of frozen time, descending into a part of this planet that had remained sealed off longer than civilizations have existed. Every meter downward was a journey backward. Snow that fell ages ago had compacted into ice. Year after year, century after century, millennium after millennium, the continent had built a vertical archive of Earth's past. Ancient air, volcanic dust, chemical traces of lost climates, storms long vanished, atmospheres from worlds no human had ever seen. And all of that was just the prelude, because the true shock was never in the ice itself. The true shock was in what the ice had been covering. To get there required more than machinery. It required precision at the edge of obsession. In Antarctica, nothing comes easy. Metal fails, fluids thicken, equipment turns fragile. The cold is not just uncomfortable, it is aggressive. It attacks every moving part, every seal, every plan. And this was not a mission where brute force could solve the problem. Scientists could not just smash their way downward and hope for the best. The moment you are trying to reach a hidden environment sealed beneath 2 miles of ice, contamination becomes the enemy. One careless mistake, one introduced microbe, one stray chemical trace, and the truth below becomes blurred. The entire mission depends on arriving clean, on reaching a world untouched by us and making sure it stays that way long enough to reveal what it really is. That is what makes the descent feel so tense. It is not only a technical challenge, it is a confrontation with a forbidden place that can only be understood if it is approached almost like a sacred boundary. And then comes the breakthrough, the final stretch, the moment when all that ancient frozen weight gives way, and suddenly the drill reaches the base. This is where expectations should have collapsed into something boring, something inert, something final, but they did not. Because below that crushing mass of ice, scientists did not encounter a dead floor. They encountered a hidden environment, liquid water, sediment, chemistry, motion. Not the rigid stillness people imagine when they think of Antarctica, but a buried system still operating in darkness. That is the part that hits like a shockwave. Under one of the most frozen landscapes on Earth, beneath a continent that seems like the definition of lifelessness, there was a place that had not surrendered to the cold. And once that realization lands, everything changes. Antarctica is no longer just a surface of white emptiness stretching to the horizon. It becomes a mask, a colossal frozen mask hiding one of the strangest environments on the planet. Because 2 miles down, you are beyond weather, beyond daylight, beyond anything resembling an ordinary ecosystem. No sun reaches there, no green life grows there, no seasons announce themselves. There is only pressure, darkness, mineral-rich water, sediments laid down over immense spans of time, and conditions so alien they sound more like another world than a place on Earth. That is why what scientists found below felt so shocking. Not because it was theatrical in a Hollywood sense, but because it revealed that the planet had been running an entire hidden system beneath our feet in total secrecy. The popular imagination has always treated Antarctica like the last great blank. But blanks are dangerous things in science. They tempt us into thinking nothing is there. That absence of visibility means absence of complexity. This discovery shattered that illusion, because what lies beneath Antarctic ice is not a void. It is a zone of interaction. Ice pressing downward with colossal force. Heat rising from Earth below, water staying liquid under pressure, sediments storing clues, chemistry unfolding in darkness. The frozen roof above may appear motionless, but beneath it the continent is not asleep. It is working, quietly, slowly, patiently. It is running processes that shape the behavior of the ice sheet itself. That is where the story turns from mystery into something even more gripping. The underside of Antarctica matters, not in some distant abstract way, but in a way that directly affects how the ice moves, how stable it is, and how the continent responds to stress. Ice is not a simple slab. It bends, flows, fractures, melts, and slides. And one of the biggest things controlling that movement is what happens at the bottom. If the base is cold and locked to hard rock, the ice behaves one way. If it sits above water, soft sediment, or warmer conditions than expected, everything changes. Friction changes, flow changes, stability changes. The base of the ice sheet is not just a foundation, it is the control panel. And for years, scientists had been trying to understand it, mostly from indirect clues. Now, by drilling through nearly 2 miles of ice, they were finally staring straight at the mechanism itself. That is why this feels cinematic even before you add dramatic music. Because the real tension was never about reaching a destination on a map. It was about reaching the one place that could explain how this giant frozen continent truly behaves. Beneath the visible monument was a hidden engine room. And inside that engine room, the rules of Antarctica are written in water, temperature, sediment, and pressure. The discovery was not just that liquid existed down there. The discovery was that the frozen continent's greatest secret might be that it is not frozen in the way people think. And then there is the deeper fear, the one that makes the whole story feel almost unreal. What if this sealed darkness did not merely contain water and mud? What if it contained life? That possibility changes the emotional temperature instantly. Because life under 2 miles of Antarctic ice would not be ordinary life. It would not be anything like forests, coral reefs, grasslands, or the ecosystems most people know. This would be life cut off from sunlight, surviving in permanent darkness, under enormous pressure, in extreme cold, with energy sources so limited and strange they barely resemble the systems most organisms depend on. And yet that is exactly what makes the possibility so electrifying. If living microbes can persist there, then life is tougher, stranger, and more adaptable than most people ever imagined. It means biology did not stop at the edge of comfort. It pushed downward into hidden chambers beneath a continent of ice and found a way to endure. That idea alone is enough to send a chill through the story. Because the Antarctic surface tells one story. It tells us this place is too cold, too remote, too brutal. But the world beneath the ice tells another story entirely. It says darkness is not the same as death. Isolation is not the same as emptiness. Extreme conditions do not always erase life. Sometimes they force life into forms so subtle, so patient, and so efficient that it becomes almost invisible. A subglacial ecosystem would not be loud. It would not announce itself in dramatic movement. Its power would be in the fact that it exists at all. Tiny organisms surviving where no sunlight has ever touched, drawing energy from minerals, chemical reactions, or ancient organic traces buried below the ice. That is not just surprising, it is worldview shifting. Because suddenly, Antarctica stops being a symbol of lifeless cold and starts becoming proof that life can slip into cracks, in reality we barely even considered. It means the biosphere may reach farther than surface intuition allows. It means the map of habitability is bigger than it looked. And it means one of the loneliest looking places on Earth may have been sheltering a hidden biological experiment all along, deep beneath its frozen armor. But even if you set life aside for a moment, the chemistry alone is enough to make this discovery extraordinary. Because water under Antarctic ice is not just water. It is part of a hidden chemical system. It reacts with rock, it absorbs minerals, it carries dissolved gases, it moves through sediments, it changes as pressure, temperature, and contact with the bed alter its properties. In darkness, chemistry becomes everything. It becomes the source of energy, the key to habitability, the signal of movement, the language of the hidden world below. Scientists reaching that environment are not just looking for something dramatic to see, they are looking for patterns in the water itself. Is it old or renewed, stagnant or flowing, rich in minerals, altered by rock interactions, carrying signs of heat from below, showing hints of biological influence? Each reading is like a sentence from a buried story the continent has been telling in secret. And the sediments beneath that water may be even more haunting, because sediments remember. Water moves, mixes, shifts. Sediments keep score. Grain by grain, layer by layer, they hold traces of ancient conditions, ancient landscapes, ancient climates. If scientists reached not just basal water, but the sediments beneath it, then they were touching material that could preserve echoes of worlds long gone. Antarctica has not always looked the way it does now. The frozen empire people pictured today is only the latest chapter. Deep in the past, parts of the continent were warmer, greener, wetter, more open. That history did not vanish completely. Some of it may still be there, hidden beneath the ice, pressed into layers of mud and mineral fragments, waiting in darkness for a drill to finally reach it. That is where the story becomes more than suspense. It becomes almost mythic. Because what lies below is not just a physical environment, it is a record of time, a buried archive of planetary transformation. Beneath the ice, there may be traces of ancient warming, evidence of earlier retreat, chemical signatures from climates that no human has ever witnessed. So when the drill broke through, scientists were not only entering a hidden space, they were entering hidden time. They were pulling the curtain back on a version of Antarctica that existed long before the modern world ever began. And the deeper you go into that realization, the more unsettling it becomes. Because the underside of Antarctica is not simply fascinating, it is consequential. If there is more water beneath the ice than expected, if sediments are softer, if geothermal heat is stronger, if the base is more lubricated than models assumed, then the ice above may not be as stable as it appears from the surface. That is the silent terror built into the science. The grand white stillness is deceptive. Its behavior may depend on hidden conditions no one can see without drilling into the abyss beneath it. A thin layer of water at the bottom can change how an immense mass of ice slides across the continent. A subtle rise in heat from below can alter the base. Small hidden changes can affect enormous visible outcomes. That is why the discovery matters so deeply. It reveals that Antarctica's greatest vulnerabilities may be buried in darkness, at the exact place most people never think to look. And then there is the geothermal element, the part that makes the whole continent feel almost alive in a geological sense. Antarctica looks like the definition of external cold, but beneath it, the Earth is still Earth. Heat still rises from the interior. Rock still stores and transmits energy. In some areas, geological conditions may create more warmth than expected. When scientists reached the bottom and encountered signs that deep heat mattered, it became impossible to treat Antarctica as a simple frozen shell. The continent is being shaped from below as well as above. Cold presses down from the atmosphere. Heat pushes up from the planet's interior. Between them lies the base of the ice sheet, where water can form, move, and transform the entire system. That collision of forces is what makes the hidden Antarctic world so dramatic. It is not inert. It is a battleground between ice, rock, pressure, heat, and time. And once you see Antarctica that way, the surface starts to feel almost deceptive. The bright white plains, the stillness, the silence, it is all just the visible layer of a much more complicated machine. Beneath it may lie networks of subglacial water, channels that open and close under pressure, hidden lakes linked by secret drainage routes, buried basins where chemistry unfolds in darkness, and sediments that preserve the memory of ancient climates. The continent is no longer a frozen block. It becomes a concealed system full of moving parts, a hidden circulation beneath a seemingly static shell. That is the kind of reversal that gives a story real suspense. The thing everyone thought was motionless turns out to be active. The place everyone thought was empty turns out to be full. And the darkness down there matters. It matters in a way that goes beyond science and into something almost primal. Antarctica's surface is among the brightest places on Earth, dazzling under reflected light, blinding in its whiteness. But 2 miles below, there is no dawn, no dusk, no horizon, no sun, only blackness. Absolute, uninterrupted, crushing blackness. A buried environment sealed away from light for ages. And yet in that darkness, water exists. Chemistry continues, possibly even life persists. That contrast is almost impossible to shake. The brightest continent on Earth hiding one of its darkest worlds beneath it. The image feels too perfect, too eerie, too cinematic to ignore. It also redefines what discovery looks like in the modern age. Most people imagine exploration as satellites, drones, maps, and screens. But here, discovery meant physically forcing a passage through ancient ice to touch something no human had ever touched before. It meant accepting uncertainty all the way down, because until that breakthrough happened, no model, no scan, no theory could fully replace direct contact. That is what gives the event such intensity. Humanity still does not know everything about its own planet. There are still thresholds, still hidden chambers, still places where knowledge stops at the surface, and only courage, patience, and precision can push beyond it. And this hidden Antarctic world does more than challenge our understanding of Earth. It expands it, because once you accept that liquid environments can exist beneath miles of ice, that chemistry can drive systems in permanent darkness, that life might survive in sealed cold reservoirs. The boundaries of the possible begin to move. Antarctica becomes more than a remote continent. It becomes proof that worlds can exist beneath worlds. That surfaces lie, that habitability can hide, that apparent desolation can conceal astonishing complexity. The implications are enormous, not because they are abstract, but because they force us to think differently about the planet itself. Earth becomes less obvious, less fully known, more layered, more mysterious. And maybe that is the hardest part of all to shake. This was never just about a hole in the ice. It was about the moment the planet answered back. For years, Antarctica had hinted that something was down there. Strange readings, buried lakes, hidden motion, subglacial mysteries. Then at last, scientists descended through nearly 2 miles of frozen history and touched the concealed underside of an entire continent. And the answer they found was not a dead end. It was a hidden system, a place of water, sediment, chemistry, heat, and possibility. A place that revealed Antarctica not as a frozen tomb, but as a locked vault full of active secrets. That is why this discovery refuses to fade into just another scientific headline. It cuts deeper than that. It tears apart the old illusion that Antarctica is simply a giant frozen shell, a lifeless monument of snow and silence. What the drill exposed was far more unnerving. This was not a continent resting in perfect stillness. This was a continent concealing motion beneath pressure, concealment beneath brightness, and an entire hidden reality beneath the most intimidating surface on Earth. The deeper the scientists pushed, the more Antarctica stopped looking like a finished landscape and started looking like a locked chamber. And once that chamber opened, even for a moment, the whole continent changed shape in the mind. Because this is where the scale of the revelation really sinks in. Human beings stood at the top of a frozen world so vast it can make a person feel erased just by looking across it. Around them was wind, cold, blinding white, and the crushing emptiness people have always associated with the bottom of the Earth. But directly below their feet was another domain entirely. No sky, no horizon, no weather, no familiar sense of above and below, just depth, buried darkness, compressed ages. And at the bottom of that descent, not a simple boundary, but a secret environment that had gone on existing without an audience. That contrast is what gives this story its force. The surface screamed desolation. The depths answered with complexity. And there is something almost unnerving in the idea that this hidden place was never waiting to be discovered in any human sense. It was not paused until the drill arrived. It was already there, already active, already shaped by its own rules. Long before the first expedition reached Antarctica, long before satellites passed overhead, long before anyone imagined instruments capable of piercing that much ice, the buried world below had its own history unfolding in complete isolation. That means the breakthrough was not the creation of a mystery, it was the interruption of one. For the first time, human attention crossed a barrier that had held firm across ages, and what it touched was a place that had never needed to announce itself to matter. That is what makes the moment feel almost mythic, not because it belongs to fantasy, but because reality itself becomes more dramatic than expectation. A continent people associate with finality turned out to have an underside that feels unfinished, active, almost breathing in geological time. Not with lungs, not with sound, but with shifts in pressure, subtle movement, hidden warmth, and interactions that have continued far beyond the range of ordinary human awareness. It is the kind of discovery that makes a planet feel newly strange, not new in age, but new in meaning, as if Earth had been keeping one of its most astonishing truths buried under the one place least likely to invite anyone down. And maybe the most cinematic part of all is how narrow the access really was. The scientists did not crack open Antarctica like a vault door swinging wide. They made a tiny passage, a fragile line between the known and the unknown. Above it stood machinery, researchers, light, instruments, human voices carried by freezing air. Below it lay crushing depth and a realm no eye had seen directly. That image matters because it captures how thin our contact with the unknown really is. All of our certainty, all of our technology, all of our maps and models sometimes come down to a single opening cut into a barrier that has stood for ages. One shaft, one descent, one chance to listen to what the planet has been hiding. And once you think of it that way, the event becomes even more suspenseful. Because what lies below is not only important for what it is, but for what it proves about the limits of surface thinking. Antarctica has always seemed like the easiest place to summarize. Coldest continent, thick ice, harsh winds, empty interior. But every one of those simple ideas starts to fracture when you imagine what the drill actually reached. A place where heat from deep below can alter what should be frozen. A place where pressure can preserve liquid in defiance of expectation. A place where darkness does not end all process, but merely changes the rules. A place where clues to ancient climates, hidden geologic behavior, and the outer limits of survival can sit together in one buried zone, untouched for staggering lengths of time. That is where the tension in this story becomes almost unbearable in the best way. Because every answer down there creates bigger questions. If the hidden world beneath the ice is more active than expected, then how much of Antarctica's visible behavior is being driven by invisible conditions from below? If there are chemical systems unfolding in that darkness, how many of them have gone unrecognized simply because no one could reach them? If the bed beneath the ice is more dynamic, more complex, more responsive than once assumed, then how many of the continent's secrets are still sealed away beyond the first breakthrough? The discovery does not close the mystery. It sharpens it. It proves the mystery is real. And that is exactly why this feels like the kind of story made for a voice in the dark, a slow rising soundtrack, a camera drifting over endless white while the narration leans in and says the most terrifying thing a discovery can say. This was only the surface, because that is the truth hidden inside the event. The famous Antarctic surface, the image everyone recognizes, was never the full story. It was the cover, the skin, the visible layer of something much deeper and much harder to predict. And once scientists touched the concealed world below, the continent ceased to be just a landscape. It became a question mark the size of a civilization. It also does something rare. It makes modern science feel ancient again. Not outdated, not primitive, but ancient in the sense that it returns to the oldest human thrill of all, descending into the unknown. Across cultures and centuries, the image of going beneath the surface has always carried weight. Caves, underworlds, buried cities, secret chambers, worlds under mountains or beneath the sea. Those ideas have power because they tap into a basic instinct that what is hidden below may be more powerful than what is visible above. And here, in the most literal scientific way possible, that instinct suddenly looks justified. Antarctica really was hiding something below its surface. Not a legend, but a reality so strange that it sounds like fiction until you remember. It is happening on this planet, beneath ice, under the pressure of time itself. There's also a brutal irony to it. Antarctica looks untouchable from the outside. It seems like the part of Earth most thoroughly locked away by nature. But the discovery below shows that untouchable does not mean simple. The cold did not erase everything under the surface. It preserved it, sealed it, forced it into forms that are harder to reach, but no less real. In some ways, the ice made the mystery stronger. It protected it from disturbance. It hid it from weather, from sunlight, from the constant noise of the surface world. What remained below was not exposed life or open terrain. It was concentration, a distilled hidden system, sharpened by isolation. And that is why even the silence of Antarctica starts to feel different after this. Before, silence suggested emptiness. Now, silence feels loaded, like a lid held tightly over something far more complicated than the eye can detect. Every frozen plain becomes a disguise. Every sweep of white becomes cover for buried interactions that do not care whether they are visible. That shift in perception is one of the greatest powers of discovery. It changes not just what is known, but how everything is seen. Antarctica, after the drill, is still white, still cold, still immense. But it is no longer simple. Now it carries the weight of hidden depth. So the image at the end should not be small. It should feel enormous. A handful of scientists standing in one of the most punishing places on Earth, surrounded by the glare of a continent that looks dead from a distance. Beneath them, nearly 2 miles of ancient ice stacked like the pages of a book written over unimaginable spans of time. Beneath that, a concealed threshold where the frozen world gives way to something older, darker, and more secretive. Then the final breach, the first true contact, the first glimpse into a buried reality that had remained cut off from direct human reach for longer than any empire, any language, any memory. No sunlight had touched it, no human footprint had come near it, and yet it was there, all along, shaping the story of the continent from underneath. That is the part no one forgets. Antarctica did not give up a simple answer. It gave up a hidden world. It revealed that under the heaviest silence on Earth, there were still forces at work. Under the oldest ice, there were still signs of motion. Under the brightest emptiness, there was still darkness full of meaning. And once that truth surfaced, the continent could never return to being just a frozen backdrop. It became something far more cinematic, far more suspenseful, and far more profound. Because once that barrier was crossed, the question stopped being what was down there and became how much of Earth has always depended on places like this. Hidden foundations, buried systems, regions so far beyond ordinary reach that they vanish from everyday thought, even while shaping the worlds above them in silence. That is what makes the descent into Antarctic ice feel so unnerving. It is not just a journey into depth. It is a confrontation with the idea that some of the planet's most powerful truths do not live on the surface at all. They exist underneath, in sealed darkness, far from sight, where pressure and time rewrite the rules. And the deeper that realization sinks in, the more Antarctica begins to feel like a warning against certainty. From above, it looks complete. It looks knowable in the broadest sense. A white mass, a frozen continent, a place defined by exposure and emptiness. But the drill proved that what appears most exposed can still be hiding the most. Under that bright, merciless landscape was a realm untouched by daylight, shielded by ancient ice thick enough to erase any hint of what lay below. And still, below that crushing weight, the hidden world endured. Not as a fantasy, not as a rumor, as a reality. That is why the image stays with you. A thin, human-made opening through layer after layer of ice, descending toward a place that had never needed to reveal itself. A place older than memory, stranger than expectation, and more important than anyone could fully grasp before contact was made. It forces a new kind of awe. Not the awe of mountains or storms or crashing oceans, but the awe of concealed existence. The awe of learning that beneath one of the most extreme surfaces on Earth, something was still unfolding in secret. And maybe that is the most cinematic truth of all. The planet did not run out of mystery when the maps were filled in. It just buried some of its greatest revelations under deeper locks. Antarctica was one of those locks. For ages it stood there, blinding white above, impenetrable below, giving nothing away. Then, at last, human beings carved a path through nearly 2 miles of frozen time and touched the concealed underside of a continent. What they reached was not a simple bottom, it was a threshold, a hidden zone where ice, water, rock, chemistry, and deep history met in total darkness, out of view of the world that had existed above it all along. So the ending is not that scientists found something shocking under the ice. It is bigger than that. It is that they proved the world beneath Antarctica is not a blank space at all. It is a buried chapter of Earth itself, one written without sunlight, without witnesses, and without interruption for unimaginable stretches of time. And when that chapter was finally opened, it changed the meaning of the continent forever. Because in the end, the true shock was not simply what waited under 2 miles of Antarctic ice. It was the revelation that beneath the coldest silence on Earth, an unseen reality had been shaping the story all along. And when that reality was finally reached, Antarctica no longer looked like the end of the world. It looked like the cover hiding another one. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, could you leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on shocking discoveries beneath Antarctic ice? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.